Well, Taiwan is strongly condemning China for carrying out military exercises and launching missiles into the waters around the island after Nancy Pelosi's visit. Joining me live now is former DFAT Australia China Council scholar Andrew Phelan. Andrew, good morning to you. You are an astute observer like no one else around this region. So what has all of this said to you this week? Where are we leading here?
Well, Nancy Pelosi was right to visit Taiwan, but the way the US handled it was a bit of a mess because it got out publicly. Biden was advising her not to go, saying the Pentagon advised her not to go. And of course, that gave China a heads up. Taiwan is a raw nerve issue for the government in Beijing. It has been since the founding of the People's Republic of China. And in the mid-90s, during the first Gulf War, the mainland shelled Taiwan. And at the time, President Clinton sent not one but two aircraft carrier strike groups through the Taiwan Strait. And China couldn't do anything about it. And from that point on, they were determined not to see that scenario happen again. And of course, between then and now, they have increased their military power dramatically.
Let's go live to Geelong now, and joining us is the Defence Minister, Richard Marles. Minister, good morning to you. So do you think China overreacted?
Well, I think, Pete, the reports of the missiles being fired are deeply concerning. We really need to be moving down a path of trying to de-escalate tensions around Taiwan. And you know, for Australia's part, as I've said a number of times in the last few days, our position remains unchanged. We don't want to see any unilateral changes to the status quo on either side of the Taiwan Strait, and we really need to be urging everyone to de-escalate the tensions that we see there.
Does it look to you to be a dress rehearsal for what they could do down the track?
Well, I think it doesn't serve to speculate on that from our point of view. Again, we want to engage in the most calm and measured way, which helps from an Australian point of view to promote a de-escalation of tensions around Taiwan. We really need to be seeing that. We obviously support a rules-based order and those rules applying in and around Taiwan as well. We are concerned about the reports of the missiles that have been fired by China, but it's now time to be de-escalating those tensions.
China sees this as an offence, right? That a high-profile, high-ranking official has gone from the US, the highest in a long time, as we just talked about, went to Taiwan, and all that China has conducted is a couple of military drills in its waters. What does that say to you?
Well, it says that they understand there would be a tremendous price to pay if they escalated matters beyond that. It doesn't mean they never will, and some are fearful that eventually a military takeover or attempted takeover of Taiwan is inevitable. But for China, there are going to be major costs too. And I should add, both parties in the United States are pretty anti-China. That is one subject, one topic that actually unites Democrats and Republicans.
What's your view on a timeline in terms of when you think, because I think most people, like you just said there, believe it's an inevitability that China it wants Taiwan back. Have you got a timeline on when you think that might happen?
No, I suspect if they were to do it, they would do it at a time when the United States and its allies were busy with other world problems and probably had their hands full militarily and otherwise. They would do it at a time when they thought they could get away with it easiest. I don't know that there will ever be such a time, but if you're going to do it, you would do it with a weakened president and a weakened set of allies.
The leader of the Al-Qaeda terrorist network is believed to have been killed in an American airstrike. Media now reporting that Ayman al-Zawahiri died following an attack in Afghanistan over the weekend. He was one of the world's most wanted terrorists and played a key role in the 9/11 attacks and took over Al-Qaeda following the death of Osama bin Laden. Indonesia is accusing Australia of violating the UN Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty over attempts to secure nuclear submarines as part of the AUKUS agreement. Indonesia is warning the technology could be converted to weapons programs. The Indonesian government is lobbying 120 other countries to support its position. China also opposes Australia's ambitions, claiming the transfer of nuclear technology to a non-nuclear weapons state would set a dangerous precedent. The Ukrainian president is urging China to abandon its neutrality and oppose Russia's invasion. Beijing has condemned Western sanctions on Moscow and is refusing to criticise the war. During a virtual address at the Australian National University, Volodymyr Zelensky says he's confident the people of China will make the right choice.
I would like China to join the unified world position as for tyranny of Russia against Ukraine. It's important that for us that China wouldn't help Russia.
He's thanked Australia for its support since the invasion began. Almost $400 million in assistance has been provided to Ukraine so far. Independent MP for Wentworth, Allegra Spender, has delivered her maiden speech to Parliament, calling for tax reform and warning the coalition against ignoring women.
Women will be represented. We have been polite, we have asked nicely, and we have waited. But we've done waiting, and we're going to take what is ours. This crossbench reflects this, and ignore it at your peril.
And Allegra Spender joins us live now from Canberra. Allegra, good morning to you. So a portion of that speech went after the coalition over the amount of female representation, but as Julie Bishop said in the past, someone like you should have been in their team. So where are they going wrong on that front, and why wasn't someone like you originally poached?
Look, I think that where the coalition has gone wrong, I think, is a couple of things. Firstly, it's actually listening to the communities that I represent. For example, wanting strong action on climate change, wanting strong action on government integrity, and finally, absolutely wanting women to be in Parliament representing people. I said in my speech last night, it's been 25 years that the coalition has pretty much stood still in terms of female representation in the lower house. And so I think that's really a question for them about why are they not really promoting women into seats that they can win, and how they do that? Because even if you look at the independent crossbench who've just brought in, only one of those people who took a Liberal seat was actually taking one from a woman. All the other people, including myself, were actually taking them from coalition men.
The federal government finished its first sitting fortnight with a major victory by passing its climate bill through the lower house. Joining us live from Canberra now is the Deputy Opposition Leader, Susan Lee. Susan, good morning, by the way. A resounding win for the Labor on climate. So how much is this going to affect you, and how much will you have to lift your targets for the next election?
Just remember, Pete, this was legislation that the government's own energy minister said they did not need. Spent half a day toing and froing in the Parliament, when the real issue this week is the rising cost of living and the government's broken promise, $275 of broken promises on power bills. That was the figure by which they said your power bill would go down. So, there was some grandstanding, sure. There was legislation that everyone agreed, including the government, wasn't even necessary. And there was a deal with the Greens. I was interested to hear the Energy Minister saying we could have spoken to the Liberals, but we spoke to the Greens instead.
A passenger arriving from Indonesia has been fined for not declaring McMuffins in their luggage. The Darwin Airport's newest biosecurity detector dog, Zinta, sniffed out the undeclared meat in the passenger's backpack, and they were issued with a $2,700 infringement notice. The meals will be tested for foot and mouth disease and then destroyed. The Agriculture Minister, Murray Watt, has labelled it the most expensive McDonald's meal the passenger ever has, and he wouldn't be very wrong about that. The UK is set for a deep recession, and Europe most likely as well, after the Bank of England overnight raised interest rates by the most in more than 25 years. Business editor Ross Greenwood joins me live. Ross, good morning. This comes just a week after the Treasurer forecast a soft landing for Australia's economy that says that there will be no recession here, though. He's continuing to maintain that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a quite different picture that's being painted both here as compared with Europe and the United States as well. So this was a big wake-up call for the UK in particular overnight. Andrew Bailey, who is the governor of the Bank of England, was making really strong statements, and it largely comes as a result of the crisis that they've got with Russian gas and therefore the price of utilities and other things. So this is what the British Bank of England did last night, raised its cash rate by 0.75%. 7% to 1.75%. Inflation is the big thing here. So the inflation in the UK right now, 9.4%, but the forecast from the Bank of England overnight sees that peaking out at something like 14%. And so this is really the key as to why potentially the UK is driven into recession.
Joining us live from Canberra is the Executive Chairman of Yellow Brick Road Home Loans, Mark Burris. So how is it affecting the housing market at the moment, this fourth straight rise, Mark?
Well, if you look at the CoreLogic numbers, which were released yesterday, nationally, housing prices are down 1.3% in the month of July alone. If that's nationally, but if you look at Sydney, Sydney's down 2.2%, Melbourne's down 1.5%, and therefore, if you do your maths, you can work out that the other capital cities down a little bit less than Sydney and Melbourne. And if you just sort of extrapolate for the year, for the last 6 months, Sydney house prices are down by 5.2%, which, by the way, is the largest drop in house prices in Sydney since the beginning of the GFC and or going right back to the 1980s. So it's fairly catastrophic in terms of house prices.
So what does that mean? Do you think that that's just a correction because things were too high, or is it because of the actions of Philip Lowe?
Well, the actions of Philip Lowe are supposed to be a response to the over-exuberance of our economy. And whether or not that's demand in Australia which is causing inflation, or if it's external supply problems that are causing inflation problems, we don't know. And no one's actually bothered to explain it to us.